Hello, good afternoon, good evening, good morning to everyone who is interested in keeping their data private. You have Marcel
Hi,
and you have me, Daniela. Hello. And we are getting together every month to talk about why it is important to keep our private and personal data private. Um, Usually we talk about some topical issues, something that has happened since the last time we met. And this time round, it was a little bit hard to find something to talk about. And the reason for that is, in my opinion, that the airwaves seem to be flooded by all sorts of geopolitical issues. There's a lot of talk about tariffs for a good reason, the economy, also a very good reason, wars that are going on, that are raging and not stopping. And all of those are really, really good reasons to write articles, put news out into the press, into the old press, the mainstream media, as well as all sorts of other outlets. In my opinion, that should not stop us to think about our data, though. So, Marcel, do you have any thoughts on that at this point?
yeah, I do think that it's worthwhile pointing out that the biggest data breach, and therefore, our personal data, or at least U.S. citizens' personal data, occurred with the Doge, um, in, access to various departmental databases, including the Treasury's database. So there's been a massive data breach and people's data has been accessed, and very little is out there about what people are supposed to do with that. I mean, it's basically affected everyone in the US, and no one's talking about it. No one's saying, well, what do we need to do? It's just throw your hands up in the air, but because it affects everyone. It's too big a problem to deal with, and people just moved on. It's just like, well, that's the new way of life, new uh, state of being. And I think it's very important to look at data breaches, and I think that's why the topic for today, talking about data breaches and how to respond to them, is so important. Because looking at effectively smaller data breaches, even though most of the ones that we hear about are pretty large in their own right, um, is important so that people understand what it is that they personally can do moving forward.
I completely agree. Um, because you hear in the headlines quite often, oh, this company or that company. There's one spa resort that's been in the news a lot. And I'm thinking, well, I wasn't there, it doesn't impact me. But this kind of thinking, in my opinion, again, my opinion only, this kind of thinking, oh, it wasn't me, ultimately will be harmful because it will be you at some point. It this day and age, it's highly unlikely you're going to make it to 100 without ever being impacted. And as Marcel just pointed out, in the US, it is everyone. It literally is everyone. Um, Globally, people are being advised, well, check your credit record. Just go and make sure that nobody's using your data anywhere online. Go to Experian is one of the bigger companies, and the other bigger companies, Equifax. Well, it turns out Equifax also had a data breach. And yes, the payout at this point is in the region of $425 million, which is a lot of money. Well, a lot of money to me personally, but at the same time, because there are 145 million people impacted, if it divided out, that would be $2.80. I did the maths when I came across the figures because it's unbelievable in my for me, it's unbelievable to me that not even $3 per person is doing any justice to what happened, because it's data that has been breached, it's trust that has
Yeah,
been broken, and what now? They are the company that are supposed to keep you safe.
yeah, exactly. And the payouts are never compensatory. You're never going to feel like that was worth going through all the hassle and the pain and suffering that you went through. So I think it's way more important to make sure your data is kept private, that
Mhm.
it that it won't be caught in one of these data breaches, and that's what we talk about most of the time. And secondly, that if it is in a data breach, that you act appropriately so that you're not caught also with secondary effects. The whole identity theft issue and having your credit rating destroyed, etc., is uh, effects that you can mitigate by acting quickly and responsibly.
Mhm. Mhm. I completely agree. Um, I did do a little bit of research in terms of what one can do and also how one can find out. In terms of how to find out about the data breach, unfortunately, the best advice I've seen is go to the website of companies that you have accounts with. Now, I know
Mm.
I'm unlikely to do that with everyone because there are so many different companies. If I think about my energy provider, for example, I keep changing them every few years as new deals come online, and every single company is a company I would have to keep track of, um,
Mm.
just to make sure that whilst they keep hold of my information, that it wouldn't be breached or that it didn't get breached. So just energy provider alone, there's a
Yeah.
good 10, 20 by now. It's not practical. It's possible, yes, but generally it's like the time that you would have to spend on it to me seems unpractical. Focusing on the highest hitting incidents, banking comes to mind, social security, or everything that's important to run your life, maybe is a way forward. Everyone will have to decide for themselves how much checking they want to do and following up. But it's a quite a sad state of affairs where this is the best advice given at the moment. There are some companies that can check for you. A lot of them are charging money for it. Um, Personally, I haven't vetted any of them. I haven't gone through the rigmarole of looking at them, what the offer has there ever been a data breach after people have signed on with them, because that has happened in similar contexts as well. That one organization I'm thinking of is suggesting that they can help you to not receive spam mail. And it turned out that this particular company were selling their list or email list to other companies. So I'm not cynical. I'm just a bit scarred by life, I believe. But it's really hard to find out what happened. And my advice would be keep listening to the news. Do check out on companies' websites if you have the time. Just make sure you keep your eyes open. And if you do find out something did happen, check your data. Again, that is when I would recommend go to your credit report, go to whatever has been impacted and make sure it does not show up anywhere else. Make sure that you know what's going on. Get in touch with whoever is running the investigation. Just make sure people know that you've been impacted as well, because over the last few weeks I've read quite a bit about the class action suits, and you may be included. And if you are included, then you don't have to get your own lawyer. You're just one of many that is being dealt with, and it's a lot easier for you to go through the process. And yes, I don't know how much the claimants in the Equifax case will receive in the end. But if you're one of those that raised their hands and said, yes, my data is part of it, at least you're being dealt with. At least somebody's going to look at it. And that's already better than nothing at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
And if worst comes to first, if and up to now, it's I've been talking about people who haven't had money stolen, who haven't had debt opened up with their details, for example. If you can prove that you had a loss, and it may be something as simple as you didn't get the mortgage for your house because your credit record was impacted negatively. That is also a loss, and then you would be compensated more. But again, at that point, you need to be able to be involved in either the class action lawsuit, or you can get a solicitor lawyer yourself And my recommendation would be to go to a specialist. It's
Yeah.
sorry.
No, I think again, the financial compensation is very tertiary to the whole situation, because what's way more important is not waiting for some payout, is getting your life back in order, and understanding what one can do to make sure things you know, aren't worse next time there's a data breach, and there will be a data breach. And I think the first step is making sure that you use something like a password manager to make sure that every single account with every single website or uh, institution that you sign up with has a different password. You can use the same email address, but has a different password. Email addresses are public in anyway, so it's probably not worth having a separate email address for every account. But you can do that as well. There's a lot of ways to have your own domain with as many email addresses as you want and have a separate email address for each account. That's possible as well. But at the very least, you should have a separate password for every single account. And if you use a password manager, that can be managed for you. Personally, I use Bitwarden. That is a reliable one, open source, and has plugins within your browser so that you can access it easily enough. But yeah, that's the first step. The second thing I think is also important is not saving the data within these accounts. So keeping that to an absolute minimum. If people don't need that data to process what you're trying to do with them, most places just need your email address and a password so they can send you stuff. But if you are buying something, for example, don't save your credit card details. Don't tick that box to make it easier for your purchase next time. Again, Bitwarden has the ability to save your credit card details so that you don't have to tick the box on their website so they save it. Make sure that they are not saving your credit card details every time you access it, so that you're typing in, or at least using Bitwarden to get the information into your password manager, into your website every time you purchase something. Stop using the easy options. And use the tools that allow to. And also, if you are going to buy something from a less reputable website that you may not trust, because you've never been there before, for example, it's not a big enough company name, it's got a reputation or something, and you do still want to buy something because it's a niche product or something, then use a one-off card number. You can go to your bank. Most banks allow you to have a digital card created for free, right? That you can use once off. You can make the purchase and then cancel the card. Use the card once, right, and then cancel it, so that even if there's a data breach and somebody tries to use that card's long been cancelled. The same way, anytime you lose a credit card, even if it's a physical one, that you can contact your bank and say, "I've lost the card." Cancel it, and then nobody can use that card number again. So you can also make sure that even if you are giving out your credit card details, for example, if they're not being used. So I think there's a lot of things that people can do, to make sure that when there is a data breach, that the data that's lost or accessed, is not affects them minimally. But if it does affect you, if you do find out that the website that you used to use access it, do things like, if you've ever bought anything on there and you've used a credit card, make sure those cards are cancelled. So they can't use those credit card details, because then again, it doesn't matter, if they got those credit card details in it. The problem is, of course, that a lot of data breaches are you're only told about 6 months later. That gives people who've stolen that 6 months to do something with it before you can even do it. And I think that is the bigger issue that we have, that when a data breach happens, that we don't find out about it for so long. Customers are not, and a lot of the payouts are because people are not being told that 6 months pass, and therefore a lot of damage happens to an individual. They haven't been allowed to take protective measures going forward. So, two things: one, minimize the footprint that you got there, and that's what we talk about all the time. Two, use things like a password manager to make sure your password is different, and don't tick that box to save your credit card details, to make it easier for your purchase next time.
I completely agree. And one last step that we haven't mentioned yet is simply to don't use your details. Get a fake email address. You don't have to use your own name. Don't put your data in. Don't put your birthday in or something. Unless there's a legal reason for them to have your real data, there's no reason to give it to them. And
Yeah. I mean, the birthday one is an interesting one because a lot of the time they need to apparently verify your age. I mean, your birth date is not verifying your age, but at least just give a different birth date. You don't have to give your actual birth date when people just want to verify your age. And that's what makes a mockery of it. Because the very people that you want to you know, try and age protect against are the very ones that are not going to give a correct birth date because they
yes,
know you have to be a certain age to access a website. They just give a fake birth date. Why are you giving your real birth date just because you actually have a valid birth date?
yeah. I used to do that a lot until I had my data stolen or my
Mm.
identity stolen, and that was traumatic. Let's leave it there. And I started putting in different birth dates, especially the year, because the day does, I think, the day a few up and down and so. But the birth year, and once I may have gone too far, so I booked a table in a restaurant where they required your birthday or year for some reason, and somebody said, "Oh, you look very good for your age." So I'm not saying it's fun having to do that, but it doesn't matter unless you're entering into a long-term partnership or collaboration with the company. There's no reason they need your details. If it is something legal, again, different point. If it's something that has legal issues or driving license and things like that, anything legal or governmental, different. But if it's something for personal use, in my case, restaurant booking, um, or a shop, as Marcel says, if it's something where it's a one-off, then why? Why bother? Why care? Or I've heard of some people who create a couple of different profiles that on some websites they are one person and they save the information and use that fake information over and over again. So you will remember it in the end. And whilst I'm not a fan of lying, sometimes it is not such a bad step in terms of self protection. And that's what it's all about.
Yeah, and it's a real question of why do people need to know this information? I think if you look at Reddit, for example, they actually encourage people not to use their real names. Because why? Why do you need to be associated with your real identity? When that identity exists on Reddit and people can associate with that, but it doesn't have to be physically associated with you in the real world. And you can think about that with a lot of interactions online. Why use your real identity? You don't need that.
Yes. Yeah. And it's even similar in the real world at times. If you go on holidays, some people behave differently when they're on holidays compared to when they're at home. Things like that. Be mindful of your data. That's all we're trying to say, I
Yeah.
guess, is be
Mm.
aware of where your data is held, how it's being held, and if you don't know how it's being stored or transmitted or changed, then don't give it to them.
Yeah. I think using an online identity as well, which is separate from your physical identity, also helps you think about how many other people are online using a different identity. So when you are interacting with people, you may not actually be interacting, with the individual you think you're interacting with, or at least you can't associate with them. And it does help you, when you're dealing with people on the internet, you need to think like that, especially in the world of AI, where a lot of the interactions that you have online are with bots. Stop
Yes.
and think, before you interact, especially if you think you're acting as your own individual, real life person with these entities that may not even be real entities on the other side. It may just be a bot.
Yes. Um, One colleague of mine who I worked with a long time ago, he was born in the 1930s. He worked all his life in IT and technology. And a good 25 years ago, he always used to say, online, nobody knows if you're a dog.
Yeah, there was a cartoon that
Yeah,
resembled that. I think it was a Far Side one. Yeah, a good one.
something like that,
But
yeah.
that's the reality. Yeah,
And That's that. That's my contribution to this world today. Is like be very aware and very mindful where your data is and how it is protected. And can you trust the people who tell you that your data is being protected?
Yeah, well, that you can't. Yeah, not even the United States Treasury can protect your data.
That's correct. That's correct. But I'm positive even this shall pass, as many people say. Mankind as a whole will get through this and we will be better off, fingers crossed. Uh, in the meantime, we just have to be a bit more aware at the moment of what's going on. And if you think that, oh, it's not ever going to happen to you, I'm not sure where in the world you are, but more oppressive or regimes and governments seem to be getting a little bit more oppressive, suppressive, and just be more interested in the data you keep generally. If you're crossing borders, be aware of your
Yeah,
data that you carry with you. You may think, oh, I have a different profile online. Well, if it's on your phone and you cross a border, they may just check that out. So again, be
yeah,
aware. It's yeah. Anyways,
yeah. It's the usual. Yeah, be very aware of what you have online. Yeah, do you want it to be public or not? Do you want everyone to have access or not? Then, if not, then don't share it.
yes. Do you have any other thoughts, comments?
No, I think it's important that people, actually take action. Be aware of what it means that the U.S. Treasury Department was effectively hacked and the data stolen. And be aware that it may just be your social security number. Well, but try and understand what it is and how it has impacted you. I haven't personally dug in to see what data has been lost yet, but I think it's going to become very relevant in the future.
Yes.
Um, and be ahead of the game. Don't wait for problems to come before responding.
I agree. Well, if there's nothing else, then thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Do come and join us next time. You don't have to put your camera on. Again, I'm not interested in your real name unless you want to give it to me.
Exactly.
You don't have to log in. Jitsi does not require an account. You can follow us on Mastodon. You can suggest topics as well if you think, oh, that would be interesting, but you don't have enough time to look into it. Suggest it. Tell us. Get in touch. And
Yeah.
most of all, stay safe. And we will see you next month.
Bye.
Okay, bye bye.